Welcome everybody to the Continuity of Learning with Microsoft Teams webinar this afternoon. Today we are going to explore how to use Microsoft Teams, how to organize it, and to support moving from our face-to-face instruction to our online learning communities. My name is Erin, and I'm here with my colleague Al. We are from Eduscape. We work to rethink learning and support educators in rethink learning by developing innovative solutions. So we are going to go over the agenda for today. What we are going to do for the first about 45 minutes we are going to explore a teacher's scenario and an exemplar teams and see how she has organized her teams using different features to build a fourth grade classroom. This will be a fourth grade example, but it can be applied and the features can be applied to any age or subject. After we go through the features, we are going to explore some Q&A. So if you see on the logistics screen right now, at the bottom of your webinar screen will be a button for question and answer. You can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar to the Q&A, and I'll be moderating them while we present. There's also a chat feature where you can chat with the other participants on this webinar to start building our professional learning network. I would encourage you to submit any questions you have to the Q&A, because with how many people we have on the call, it's possible your question might get missed in the chat. You might also notice that your mic and videos are muted. That's just to support the number of participants on our call. But if you were to use Zoom in the future, you would be able to use your mic and video to engage with other people on your call. So we will get started in the content. If you would like to take a second to get oriented with the features of chat and Q&A, you can start submitting any initial questions you have. And also, if you haven't already shared in the chat, just share where you're joining from today. We're here in Montvale, New Jersey, ready to support you through Teams. So to start with our scenario of Miss Robbins, like many of us, she has a class that's moving from face-to-face instruction to online learning due to the school closing temporarily to take precautions around the COVID-19 virus. She teaches fourth grade science at East Elementary School, and she is already gone through a process where she's identified what the content is she would like to teach, but she needs to use Teams in order to help organize that information to support this digital learning. Some questions she has as we go through this that we'll explore is how can Teams support students in increasing communication, community, how can she assess student learning, and how can she create access points? Some questions she has are, what are the features of Teams I should be aware of? How can I create a digital community using Teams? How can I create an engaging online experience for my students? How can I assess students using Teams? And how can I create access points for students? So we are going to see how she organizes her virtual learning community using Teams. The lenses in which we're going to look at today, just to reiterate, are how we can use Teams to build a digital community, how we can encourage consistent communication between all stakeholders, including students, parents, guardians, anybody that's supporting this the children through this transition from face-to-face instruction to online instruction, including how we can assess students using a variety of tools, and how do we create access to learning. This includes content, skills, as well as access to technology. So let's see how Ms. Robbins utilized Microsoft Teams to support her students in remote learning. So we're going to switch from our PowerPoint slides to our Teams.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is how she created her team. Right now you can see that we are in the desktop version of Microsoft Teams. Just so you know, you can also access this from the web by going to office.com. So if you don't have it downloaded, you still can do the web-based version of Teams. So from this desktop version, I'm going to click right here, join or create a team. And then I would just click create team. From here, it gives me 4 different options on how to create a team or what kind of team I want to create. They're all very similar, but there are some minor differences among them based on what it thinks that your learner needs are. In this case, because Mrs. Robbins is a classroom teacher, she's going to create a class team. Some of the differences between this and the others is that it will create a class notebook, a notebook for each individual student. It will allow students to submit assignments and allow the teacher to create assignments, etc. That's what's going to best fit her needs. So she's going to create a class team type. So now let's look at this layout and how this is all set up, right? On the left rail, we see the first place we're going to go to navigate. We have activity, which is essentially like a newsfeed style social media space that's going to give you notifications and updates. Chat is where you can communicate with people via text chats, also video and audio chats. This acts a lot like text messaging or SMS on your phone. Teams, which is where we are now, this is going to give us all the teams that we're part of. In this case, Ms. Robbins is part of 2 teams. Assignments, where you could look at all of your assignments for all of your classes. The calendar, which is a calendar, and then calls as well. You can also integrate other apps to make your Microsoft Teams experience more unique to your needs. And you can also view it through a mobile device down here. So right now we're going to start looking at her team, 4th grade science. So this is the layout of her basic team. First, I want to talk about how Ms. Robbins, approached communication using Microsoft Teams. The first thing she did was she established several channels within her team. In order to do that, all she did was she clicked more options and she added channels. All right, so these are like subsections to the team. Some of the channels she created to foster communication were announcements and schedules as one. Here, this is a place where she can post her class expectations, like her grading policies, or even weekly schedules. This is a place for students to get caught up on what is coming down the pike and general announcements. She also created one called Our Community Shares. This is a place where her students are able to share anything positive in their lives, what's happening to them, etc. A place where they can communicate about things that aren't necessarily academic. She also created a parent communication channel. This allows parents to communicate with the teacher, parents to communicate with one another, and Ms. Robbins to communicate with the parents. So this, is a reminder to parents that she wants them in on the conversation during this whole digital learning process. She also has a channel called Tech Tips. Tech Tips is a place where any conversation could take place about different tech needs or general tips. Somebody has a good idea that they think might benefit other people, they could post it here. And I use the word people because it doesn't necessarily have to be a responsibility relegated to teachers. I don't know about you, but when I was a teacher, I found often that my students knew a lot more about technology than I did. So this could be a place where the teacher could learn if students are participating and providing tips and ideas, or a place where a teacher could ask questions just like students or even parents. Another way that she wants to communicate with her students and parents or guardians is through video conferencing. The way she does that is she goes to the calendar where she schedules meetings. In these meetings, she has video conferencing set up. In this case, whole class meeting. This is because part of her lesson design includes synchronous learning, where she logs in at the same time as her students, and she's going to meet with them through a video conference to do whole group instruction or something along those lines. She also creates meetings so that she can get acquainted with parents. In this case, she's created a parent orientation that parents can join so they could feel like they understand how this is being structured a little bit better. She, of course, could also schedule individual meetings with parents or meetings with parents and their children, etc. If you wanted to create an impromptu meeting, right, at that moment, Ms. Robbins could click the Meet Now option, or she could schedule a new meeting down the line with using the new meeting button. Another way that she's going to communicate with parents, stakeholders, and students is with the chat feature. This is what I was talking about before, where it's like a text message or an SMS message. Ms. Robbins can message individual students or parents, or she could message groups of people at once. Another thing to point out is that she can share what's called praise, as you see right here, just by clicking this little medal down here, this icon. That provides her with the option to praise students for something that they did well. We're going to show other ways how to do that later, but for now you can see that you can do that in this chat. She also has the ability to upload files, attach emojis, attach GIFs, or anything else that she might think is conducive to interactive communication through this chat. Another thing she can do is she can create a video call or an audio call through this chat section. You do also want to consider student privacy when you're using this. Some messages should be communicated privately through this chat, as opposed to some of the other ways that we can communicate, like through a channel post section, like we just went over. Just a reminder that that's what this looks like. If I go to, let's say, Tech Tips channel, this is the posts section where you can post to everybody in this channel, which in this case is everyone. So she has a few options available to her. She could either communicate to everyone or to individuals or specific groups of people. Another thing that Ms. Robbins wanted to really foster in her Microsoft team is community. Community is really important in our classrooms. It's just as, if not even more important, in our digital classrooms. One way that she tries to foster her community is, again, through channels, building these channels so there are subsections of her team. One channel that she built is called Community Code. Here, she tries to foster community by revisiting her in-class norms that she established at the beginning of the year, but she might also establish new digital norms that might not have been relevant to a brick and mortar classroom. Here she also created a check-in with Microsoft Forms, so students could participate in building norms too. Another channel she created is called Our Community Shares, which we went over earlier. Our Community Shares really fosters this sense of community because in this time more than ever, students might feel disconnected or isolated. And so it's really important for us to create that feeling of connectedness. So Our Community Shares is a channel where students can just share anything that's going on positive in their lives. We mentioned the idea of praising earlier. In this case, Ms. Robbins praised a student who she knew would love the idea of everyone seeing that they were praised because they're so proud of what they accomplished. Other students might not want that attention, so that praise might be better off in a chat, a private chat. Another example of a channel that Ms. Robbins created to facilitate community is called Parent Communication. Here, again, she wants her parents to feel part of the community. The community should not just be teacher and student, but all student stakeholders. Here she created a form where parents can submit suggestions. Not only might this be very helpful to Ms. Robbins because they might have great ideas that she hadn't considered, it also communicates to the parents that their opinions are warranted and wanted because they're part of the community. Another thing that Ms. Robbins was trying to foster in her team is she was considering how she was going to assess her students. If we go to the general channel, which is the default channel, we can click on this assignments tab right here. And this is where she can create various assignments for her students just by clicking this create button. In this case, she's so far created 3 different assignments, and she's tagged them so students know what kind of assignments they are. In this case, it's classwork. In this case, it's quiz. In this case, it's a project. These tags are helpful because, one, you can filter for the kind of assignment you're looking for, but it also aligns to the grading policy she put forth earlier in the team so that students know the weight of these assignments. Teachers can also create rubrics in Microsoft Teams or add them by uploading them. So in this example, Ecosystems Unit Project, because it's a project, Ms. Robbins wanted to include a rubric. So let's look at what the rubric might look like for students. We're just going to click on Student View right here. And then if we click on the rubric, we're going to see what students see if they look at the rubric as they're completing the assignment. In this case, they know what they're being assessed on so they can prepare the material accordingly. Let's look at what it looks like for Ms. Robbins as she's grading a student. In this case, she wants to grade Michelle's assignment. She's going to click on the rubric, and she could choose where Michelle landed on her assignment and then provide feedback for each of those sections, for each of these criteria. Here she could give actionable feedback so Michelle can improve her second iteration of her submission. Ms. Robbins also created a quiz using Microsoft Forms. It wasn't graded yet because this is a simulation, but we'll show you what it looks like for students. So this is an example of what a Microsoft form might look like. In this case, Ms. Robbins used objective questions to check her student understanding. This is immersive reader friendly. If you're not familiar with immersive reader, we are going to go over it in a minute, but essentially what it is a way for students to access text. So it's beneficial for students with poor vision, for example, students who are emerging readers, students who perhaps are English language learners or have dyslexia. This is also mobile friendly. If you want to see what it looks like on a mobile phone, this is how it would be laid out. Mrs. Robbins can also grade student work by going to the grades ribbon.
And the great thing about this grade section is that you can input grades and also return the grades to students. So that way they're able to see their scores parents are able to see their scores, and you can turn around grades with timely feedback to students, which can be really important to help open communication and expectations of how they're progressing in the course as well. So in order to do that, you can, when you type in a score, it'll give you the 3 ellipses option, and when it's ready to be sent, you can return to students, and that would send the student a notification and the ability to see their grade as well.
Another thing that Ms. Robbins was concerned about is the idea of access, student accessibility. Let's look at this channel, for example, the unit on ecosystems. So this is a post in the posts ribbon that students can also access Immersive Reader. So this increases student accessibility, as we were showing you before, for all sorts of students. Not only is it for students with poor vision, but also it can read by pressing play for students who are blind. You can extend, separate syllables and highlight different parts of speech. You can use line focus. Picture dictionary is great for English language learners. She also has some students who use small group instruction in her class. This is a channel that is specific to, it's a private channel for only students who are in the small group instruction. Here she's going to invite only those students to respect their privacy. There are also multiple access points to this team. As we said before, this is a desktop. You can also access it on the web, and you can also access it through a mobile phone.
Before we continue to Q&A, I just want to show a couple more demonstrations based on things that have been asked. So we discussed how to create a team by starting from this platform and using Join or Create, as well as how to access the team's platform either through the desktop app or the web browser. I just want to show how to add students. When you create a team, it will prompt you to add students at the beginning, but if you don't have your roster in front of you, you need to wait for students to be inputted, or if you have new students, once you're in the team for the class, you can click the ellipses just like you would to add a channel. You can select Add Members, which would allow you to add both students as well as co-teachers, which would allow you to coordinate with other teachers as well to help minimize the amount of communication or resources that students need to reference during their online learning. By using these ellipses, you can also invite students to the team by selecting Get Link to Team. It will provide a link that can then be copied or copy and emailed to students or messaged to them however else they're being messaged. And that will take them directly to be able to access the team. There was also a request to show how to present a PowerPoint slide presentation while sharing or in a meeting. So if you are in a video conference and you join the meeting, you would have the ability, this might have double cameras, but you would have the ability to share your screen. You would select the screen if the slide deck was either in Teams or in PowerPoint itself. You could select which one, and it would start presenting your screen just like we did as we were presenting our PowerPoint presentation. You also have the ability to record. So any students who are absent or unable to learn in the moment, if you're doing synchronous learning, would allow you to start that recording as well. So at this point, we're just going to summarize the key features that helped Ms. Robbins organize her classroom. So in order to create those communities, open communication, help with assessment of student learning when they're not together in the same space, and also create access in terms of content and technology. Ms. Robbins utilized channels and posts, chats, including audio and video conferencing, as well as text-based chats, to meet with students and schedule on calendars. To assess students, she utilized creation of assignments and forms, and also graded students within teams, and was able to give timely feedback by returning grades and leaving comments in the form of feedback for students. To support access, she utilized Teams in the first place because its ability to be mobile friendly, access through a desktop or web browser. Using the immersive reader function supports English language learners, students with disabilities, or just any student in need of text modifications in order to support their processing. She also utilized the ability to make channels private or public to determine how she wanted to communicate with different groups of students in order to encourage a meaningful and engaging online experience for her students. We're now going to move to open forum discussion to review any questions that were asked or answer any that have not yet been answered. As we move into Q&A, you will also notice at the top of the screen, there is a planning form that you can use as a takeaway from this webinar by following the bit.ly. When you access the takeaway document, you'll have a summary of the different features that we cover related to their purpose, whether they're to support communication, community access, or assessment, as well as some guiding questions to consider as you're organizing your teams to support student learning, as well as engage parents. So at this time, we'll review any questions that were asked, as well as answer any questions. One question that came in is, can you also go over how to schedule a meeting? We'll absolutely demo that. And also, there's one other question before we start to demo how to schedule a meeting. It says, for computer training, can you see the student's computer? The only way you would be able to see the computer is if you ask them to share your screen using Teams. Right now, there's not a function where you can take over their screens in Teams. However, there may be an application that integrates with Teams. So if you submit that question about being able to see student screens outside of screen sharing, if you could submit that to info@eduscape.com, any questions that we are not able to answer as fully as we'd like, or just that would require more research or follow-up, if you submit those questions, we'll be able to support you in following up through email. So to demonstrate how to schedule a meeting, exiting from the PowerPoint back into the team, if you go to your calendar and you know there's a specific date and time, you can click the calendar directly or select new meeting. You'll be able to input the title of the meeting, who would like to attend. If you don't know who's attending, you can always still schedule the meeting without putting in the attendees. The time, if it repeats, you can assign it to a channel as well. So if you want to notify parents that a parent meeting is happening, you can assign the event to the parent communication channel. Or if you want to assign or create an event around studying for a quiz or an upcoming test, you could assign it to the quiz projects and tests or the announcements channel in order to inform students that this event is happening, as well as if there's a location and any meeting details. When you've completed this information, you would be able to click save, and that information would populate on your calendar, just like these sample events here. I see, so if we set this up, we could use this instead of, say, Zoom or Skype to hold synchronous sessions. Great question. So for the purpose of this webinar, we are using a Zoom webinar because we are reaching out to all educators who may not currently have their Microsoft set up. However, that is absolutely true within the Teams platform. by scheduling the video conferencing, you can hold your synchronous, and for those who might be new to the online learning terminology, synchronous learning meaning learning is happening at the same time. So you could use your video conferencing to conference in multiple students or a whole class in order to facilitate a lesson. If you're at, I know there's some who are joining us from higher education. If you are conducting a lecture, students could all video conference in, or just any lesson you're doing, it may not be lecture style, could video conference in, be muted if they're just watching, or come off mute in order to participate actively in it as well. As long as they have the link, someone asked a question about would the meeting be an open meeting that students can join if they want to or not, if there are no attendees. As long as they have access to the calendar invite, they could choose to join without being mandated to join. So that's absolutely true. Some other questions that were asked were how to show a PowerPoint presentation. So that would be using the share feature of your video chat like we shared. Someone asked a question about if assignment results can be downloaded and integrated into other LMSs or learning management systems such as Blackboard. In your assignments, in the top right corner when you're in the assignments, it will say download Excel. It will download the student's name, the assignment information, as well as grades if grades had been inputted. That can be used as an Excel file or converted to a CSV file and uploaded to LMS such as Blackboard if the LMS has the capabilities to input CSV files for data or upload data to it. There was a wonderful question about student permissions in terms of typically Microsoft recommends or licenses that Teams are for students who are 13 years old. I've surveyed our colleagues and they have said that schools, when they set up their tenants, have different permissions and privacy settings to allow younger students. We'd ask that you default to your district or administration and IT team around this. If you are your IT team or district, I've asked that that question be submitted to info@eduscape.com too, so we can help follow up and give information about how to use Teams with younger grades as well. At this time, we've answered all the questions that are in. If there's any questions that you think of after or as we start to wrap up, please feel free to email them to info@eduscape.com. The video recording from this webinar will be posted on our website, which is listed on the screen. You can follow up on our website a couple days from now, and the posting will be there, and you're able to use it and share it with anybody else who wasn't able to join this webinar. We also are extremely active in connecting professionals to each other through our different social media platforms. At the bottom of the screen, you can see our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram handles. We are all about bringing educators together to work through this information and this transition from face-to-face to online learning. So it's a great place to connect with others who might be on this call or others who are connected through our social media as well. As we close out this meeting, there is going to be prompted a evaluation as we close out. If you could please take the evaluation, we greatly appreciate your feedback. We make adjustments to each webinar in order to make sure it's the best experience possible for all those who are joining us. And real quick before I sign off, I just want to address one last question that came in so I can make sure everyone's heard. It says, can you repeat the answer to the PowerPoint posting? Absolutely. And please write in if I'm not answering it correctly or if I'm not addressing your question. But in terms of posting PowerPoint, when you're in your Teams and you schedule a video conference, you'll use the share feature of the video conference, and that will allow you to choose your screen and share your PowerPoint, because the PowerPoint will be up on the screen already and it'll be able to present your screen out to everybody. So just to repeat, through the video conferencing feature, you would select share and choose the screen with the PowerPoint in it to share out your PowerPoint to those who are watching your video conference. If you upload a PowerPoint to the file section of Teams as well, students would be able to access that PowerPoint. If you'd like those steps just explained any in depth, just please submit to email at which is info@eduscape.com, and we'd be happy to review that again. Thank you everybody for your time. Good luck on your transition from face-to-face to online. We're here for you. If you need anything, please email or check out our website for more events and recordings from the webinars as well. Thank you, everybody.